Chief Judge Jeb Boasberg just obliterated Trump administration's games in federal court, and sources suggest what he uncovered might expose the entire Venezuela operation as fraudulent from the start. We're not talking about routine judicial oversight. We're talking about reports that Trump's evidence proving 137 men are Tren de Aragua terrorists consists of wearing Michael Jordan Bulls jerseys, having tattoos, and making hand gestures experts call laughable. That American Civil Liberties Union revealed 75% have no criminal record, and many entered legally as vetted refugees. And what might make this significant is Judge Boasberg's refusal to let Trump cover up illegal deportations.
District Judge James Boasberg now saying that the government appears to have acted in bad faith. This comes after the hearing wrapped just moments ago to determine whether or not the government violated his court order to stop the deportation flights, 2 of them with alleged members of a gang, to a mega prison in El Salvador.
He's demanding they submit plan for due process to men they shipped to El Salvador in middle of night violating court orders. When federal judge discovers government's case for invoking Alien Enemies Act is based on people wearing sports jerseys, that's not minor dispute. That could be exposure of fraudulent justification. But before we break down how Judge Boasberg is destroying Trump's Venezuela scheme and why Marco Rubio's excuses are collapsing, real quick, you cannot trust mainstream media to explain how absurd Trump's evidence is or how Judge Boasberg is holding administration accountable. That's why we built John Brown Show to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want analysis connecting Trump's fraudulent gang classifications to illegal oil seizure and why this judge might force House of Cards to collapse.
President Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act last month. It's a wartime authority used to deport non-citizens with little to no due process by arguing that the Venezuelan gang is a, quote, hybrid criminal state that he says is invading the country.
Hit that subscribe button right now. All right, let's get into what Judge Boasberg uncovered and why sources suggest it reveals Trump's Venezuela operation was built on fabricated evidence. Because think about sequence. Trump claims 137 men are dangerous terrorists, uses that to justify Alien Enemies Act, seizes Venezuelan oil fields claiming he's fighting narco-terrorists. But when forced to present evidence in court, what do they offer? Reports indicate proof consists of wearing Bulls jerseys because gang supposedly uses Bulls imagery, having rose tattoos common in Venezuelan culture, making hand gestures experts say have no gang connection, 75% having 0 criminal record, many being legal refugees who passed vetting. That's not terrorism evidence. Sources suggest Trump randomly labeled Venezuelans as gang members to justify military operation. And Judge Boasberg isn't buying it. He's demanding they prove case or return men for hearings. Let's examine what Trump administration presented as evidence because sources suggest it's absurd. According to ACLU filing, government's proof includes wearing Bulls jerseys, particularly ones bearing Michael Jordan's name. Think about that. Millions worldwide wear Bulls jerseys. Jordan is universal icon. Bulls are Chicago's home team. Reports indicate claiming Bulls jersey indicates gang membership is what experts described as close to laughable. Yet that's supposedly evidence justifying deportation without due process and oil seizure. And there's more ridiculous classifications. Sources suggest government cited rose tattoos as gang indicators, but their own intelligence determined rose tattoos are typically Venezuelan culture, not gang affiliation. So they're using cultural symbols as terrorism proof. Think about how racist that is. You're Venezuelan with cultural tattoo, therefore narco-terrorist. That's not evidence-based law enforcement. That might be ethnic profiling disguised as national security. Reports indicate government relied on hand gestures, symbols, logos, graffiti as proof. But experts agree Tren de Aragua lacks consistent iconography or unifying symbols. They don't have gang colors or distinctive clothing. No evidence they maintain constitution or issue membership documentation. Yet Trump administration treated non-existent markers as definitive proof. Sources suggest that's not intelligence analysis. That's making up classifications to justify predetermined outcome. And here's what makes it damning. ACLU revealed approximately 75% sent to El Salvador's Secot prison had no criminal record in United States or abroad. Think about that. 3/4 of supposed terrorists never convicted of any crime anywhere. Many entered lawfully, including several as highly vetted refugees. Sources indicate refugee vetting is extremely rigorous, involving multiple interviews and background checks. These aren't people who snuck across border. They went through official channels and were approved. So Trump's case boils down to this. People with no records who entered legally and passed vetting are terrorists because they wore jerseys and had tattoos. When you lay it out clearly, this isn't about fighting gangs. Sources suggest this might be creating pretext for military operation by randomly labeling Venezuelans as criminals. Judge Bosberg apparently recognizes that's what happened. But let's talk about Judge Bosberg and why sources suggest he represents what federal judiciary should be confronting: executive overreach, because he's been trying to hold administration accountable since March. Reports indicate he's judge who started criminal contempt proceedings against Trump administration for violating orders. Those proceedings blocked a couple times by DC Circuit. But there's new hearing that could send case back, allowing him to continue pursuing contempt, primarily against Kristi Noem. Think about what triggered contempt. Judge Bosberg ordered 137 men get habeas corpus due process rights to argue they're not Trinidad members and should stay in United States. That's not radical activism. That's Supreme Court precedent established last year requiring due process before deportations. But sources suggest Trump responded by shipping men to El Salvador in middle of night in direct violation. They literally did exact thing judge told them not to do. And then worse, reports indicate they arranged prisoner exchange facilitated by El Salvador, transferring men to Venezuela just before supposed war. Think about timing. They're sending people to country they claim to be at war with. If men were terrorists, why send them to enemy nation? Sources suggest answer is Trump wanted them beyond federal court jurisdiction so they couldn't get hearings exposing fraudulent classifications. But ACLU kept track of clients. They ran back to court, and Judge Bosberg said, submit plan for due process. Remote hearings, Zoom calls, flying them back, doing it in consular offices, whatever proposal. Reports indicate judge gave every opportunity to comply. Their response allegedly was Marco Rubio declaration saying, situation too delicate, negotiations too sensitive, can't guarantee facilities. Basically, we're not doing anything, judge. Sources suggest Bosberg isn't accepting excuses. He's ordered government to respond to ACLU's proposals by February 2nd, then holding hearing February 9th to decide. Think about that. Federal judge forcing Trump to either provide due process as Constitution requires or explain in open court why they're refusing to follow law. That's judicial branch doing its job, checking executive overreach. And it's happening because one judge refuses to let Trump get away. Share this video with everyone because there's reportedly broader significance. Judge Bosberg is Republican appointee. Sources indicate he's facing bar complaints, judge complaints, attempts to remove him, even impeachment threats. Yet he keeps pursuing justice. That's what impartial judiciary looks like, functioning properly. One judge standing up to presidential administration, regardless of political pressure, because Constitution requires it. But let's examine Marco Rubio's declaration and why sources suggest ACLU destroyed every excuse for denying due process. Because Rubio claims situation in Venezuela too delicate to facilitate return of class members to United States. But as ACLU pointed out, declaration fails to explain why current Venezuelan leadership wouldn't honor specific agreement made by Maduro regime to not impose obstacles to travel. Reports indicate even Maduro willing to let men go to United States. So delicate negotiations excuse doesn't hold up when supposed enemy country isn't blocking anything. And there's contradiction about flights. Rubio claimed civilian travel heavily restricted, but sources suggest Department of Homeland Security expanded deportation flights to Venezuela since ouster, sending 3 flights past week. Think about that. They're flying people to Venezuela regularly. Those planes come back to United States. Why can't they be filled with 137 men seeking due process? Reports indicate administration has no problem sending deportation flights, but suddenly can't bring people back for constitutionally required hearings. ACLU pointed out At least 3 commercial flights per day running regularly. Homeland Security Air operating on normal schedule. Sources suggest Rubio's claim about restricted travel is false. Infrastructure exists to transport these men. Administration just doesn't want to because hearings would expose fraudulent classifications. When your excuses are contradicted by your own agency's flight schedules, judge notices disconnect. And think about Rubio's role. Trump called him Viceroy of Venezuela. He's supposedly running operations, yet he claims can't figure out way to get 137 people on plane or to consular office for hearing. Sources suggest that's not credible. If you have authority to conduct military operations and seize oil fields, you have authority to arrange transportation for court-ordered hearings. Reports indicate real reason isn't logistical impossibility. It's that administration knows men aren't terrorists and hearings would prove it. There's also a question of what happens at hearings. ACLU told judge they might not even need full hearings because they're so confident. Sources suggest they offered to submit affidavits and summary judgment papers without testimony because government doesn't have proof clients are Tren de Aragua members. Think how remarkable that is. Defense so confident they're willing to proceed on papers alone. That tells you they know administration's case will collapse under scrutiny. Share this with everyone because there's reportedly another element. Judge Bosberg ordered government to respond to ACLU's specific proposals. Bring them to consular offices, fly them back, allow written submissions, explain why options won't work. Sources suggest administration now has to either comply or admit in court filing they're simply refusing to follow judicial orders. That creates record of contempt that could have serious consequences. But step back and consider what this reveals about Trump's entire Venezuela operation and why sources suggest it might expose fraudulent justification. Because think about claimed legal basis. Trump invoked Alien Enemies Act, which allows detention of nationals from countries at war with United States. But to use that authority, you need actual enemies posing genuine threat. Reports indicate Trump's evidence these men are enemies consists of sports jerseys and cultural tattoos. That's not meeting legal standard for invoking wartime detention powers. And there's connection to oil seizure. Trump justified taking Venezuelan oil by claiming he's fighting Tren de Aragua terrorists. But if 75% of people he classified as terrorists have no criminal record, and many are legal refugees, what does that say about his gang designations generally? Sources suggest entire operation might be built on systematically mislabeling Venezuelans as criminals to create pretext for military intervention. When federal judge exposes methodology as fraudulent, it undermines legal basis for everything that followed, including oil seizure. Think about international law implications. You can't invade country and seize resources because you claim some nationals are gang members. You need actual evidence of state-sponsored terrorism or imminent threat. Reports indicate Trump's evidence wouldn't withstand scrutiny in legitimate court, which is why they tried shipping men beyond judicial reach. But Judge Bosberg maintained jurisdiction, and now they have to defend classifications experts call laughable. And there's precedent concern. If Trump gets away with labeling people terrorists based on clothing and tattoos, what stops them from using same methodology against any immigrant group? Sources indicate today, it's Venezuelans wearing Bulls jerseys. Tomorrow might be any other nationality whose cultural symbols administration decides to classify as gang markers. Reports suggest this case is about more than 137 individuals. It's about whether government can invent evidence to justify military actions without judicial oversight. There's also question of what happens to men already deported based on fraudulent classifications. If Judge Bosberg rules administration's evidence is insufficient, and these 137 entitled to return in hearings, does that create basis for challenging other deportations? Sources suggest potentially thousands of Venezuelans might have been wrongly classified using same absurd methodology. Make sure you're subscribed to John Brown Show because there's reportedly political dimension. When Americans learned Trump's justification for seizing Venezuelan oil was based on classifying refugees as terrorists because they wore Jordan jerseys, how does that affect support? Sources suggest even people who initially supported military action might question it when they understand evidence was fabricated. So here's what Judge Bosberg's rulings reveal. Administration's evidence that 137 men are terrorists consists of wearing Bulls jerseys, having cultural tattoos, making common hand gestures experts call laughable. 75% have no criminal records. Many are legal refugees. Judge Bosberg demanding they provide due process. Marco Rubio's excuses contradicted by regular deportation flights. ACLU so confident they offered to proceed on written submissions alone. Sources suggest entire case exposing that Trump's justification for invoking Alien Enemies Act was based on fraudulent gang classifications. February 9th hearing could produce record showing systematic fabrication. Question is whether exposure leads to accountability.